Penn State wins and covers the spread at Illinois, but there's some things to be concerned about going forward. Once again, Tim Maiden, Patrick Kerbler from BlackSheepDiaries.com. Pat, I want to play a clip real quick from last month when you and I were doing our season preview show. I'm going to play it for you right now. Can you all see my screen? Here we go.
I have a feeling that when we hop on this post-game show after Illinois, even if it's a win, it's going to be one of those like, ugh, that was not fun for 3 hours type of game. So,
well, Patrick, sir, you called it. It wasn't exactly fun for most of those more like 4 hours, because you know how Fox loves to just throw in commercials whenever they have the chance, even despite the new clock rules, which are supposed to speed up the game, but really it's just less football, more commercials. But that's a rant for another show. But Pat, I guess do you want to start with the good part? We'll start with the good part. Let's talk about
before we start the good part. I just want to say that despite the fact that I think that we're both probably wearing the same T-shirt that we did in that preview episode, I just want to say that was taken weeks ago. Just to be clear, we look exactly the same. I was like, hold on, but no, we can start with the defense. I just wanted to point that out, that I was right about this game because I've been following Penn State football for 20 years and I know these idiots because I'm an idiot. That's how I know. But go ahead, let's start with the good stuff.
Yeah, it's the good stuff. The defense, 5 turnovers, 3 of them in the first half alone. They really got Luke Allmeyer frustrated at times. He threw some balls that maybe could have been caught for some big gains, and instead they, ended up killing drives. But of course, Penn State was sort of able to capitalize, and again, we'll get more into that when we talk about the offense. But, really just another phenomenal performance from the defense. Even at times when Illinois had some promising drives going, they were able to get us. I think the opening drive, Illinois is moving the ball, and, Penn State finally gets them into a 4th down kicking situation. So they try a field goal. They miss it. So, Illinois couldn't capitalize on its opening possession. And then I think about second half, Illinois had another promising drive, which, it was a 16-7 game at that point. You score a touchdown there and it's absolutely game on, but Johnny Dixon coming up with a clutch interception near the goal line to just crush Altmaier's hopes and dreams there. So things like that. And I believe it was Kobe King had a fumble recovery as well to kill another drive. So, defense really, they showed up to play today, and, given how the offense looked, which again, we'll get into shortly, they needed that kind of performance from the defense. Felt a bit like 1999's team, to be frank, where you had a defense just bailing out and offense that just couldn't get out of its own way a lot of the time.
Yeah, despite the first 2 weeks, right? I think coming out of that West Virginia game, and granted, it was probably what we were told or what we expected going into the season, right? That the defense would be really elite, right? Top 5 unit in the country, if not the best one of the very best units in the country, versus the offense, which we thought, would eventually get going, but probably had some more question marks, right? What is Drew going to be? Is there number 1 wide receiver? How is wide receiver depth going to be? So coming out of the West Virginia game, I think people saw, the offense kind of performed better than expected. The defense, despite the fact that it only gave up, 7? Well, West Virginia got that touchdown at the end, but right, despite the fact that the first team defense only gave up 7 points against West Virginia, wasn't probably the cleanest game from them. And obviously last week against Delaware, it was tough to take really anything away, but the defense gives up a big 66-yard run. The offense was super efficient, did what they really were supposed to do against, a team like Illinois, an FCS team. So when you take those 2 games into account and seeing what Illinois had looked like in their first 2 games, right, people were kind of starting to pick, okay, like Penn State's offense shouldn't really have too much of a problem today. But, like we played that clip in the beginning of the show that kind of showed, what we were all expecting going into the season. That's kind of what played out, that, Drew Lar is only a sophomore, despite the fact that, I have tried to give him the Heisman after the last 2 games. It appears that maybe he's not the Heisman Trophy winner yet. He looked like a sophomore. He looked like somebody that was, in their 3rd game starting. He didn't look overrated today. That is wrong.
I wouldn't say he did not get helped out by his receivers. I counted at least 3 drop passes. One, which should have been a touchdown for Katron Allen, when he threw it was actually the only kind of fade I'd be okay with. Otherwise, ban fade passes. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it wasn't his best game. But go on.
We can get into the offense later. I guess we want to kind of start with, right, we said let's start the good, and then here I am. Just
Defense. So yes, we talked about the defense. Just did a great job of adjusting after that first drive, not really letting Illinois get into any kind of rhythm. The only time the first team gave up points was after Illinois blocked a long field goal attempt by Alex Falcons, who, by the way, maybe we just start talking about Mr. Falcons for a second. He was Mr. Clutch in the first half with the field goal kicking, with that block kick aside. Nailed 3 of them, including one right before halftime, where Penn State got the ball back less than a minute to go, and they managed to drive down the field. Drew Auer threw a nice ball to Liam Clifford towards the sideline. You were hoping maybe they would have punched it in, or Drew could have thrown a nice pass to the end zone for a touchdown. It would have felt a lot better if it was 20-7 instead of 16-7. But at least Falcons put it through this time, didn't get it blocked. But he was pretty money. He nailed a 45-yarder in addition to, I think, a 34-yarder. Actually, I got the stats up here real quick, so I will correct myself. But, well, I just see the 45 for as long. So that was what I remember the most, is 45-yarder, which, given how shaky kicking's been for Penn State over the last, I don't know, now several years, it's kind of refreshing to see Falcons be Mr. Reliable. I'm getting some Tyler Davis in 2016 type vibes out of the kid, Pat.
That's all you can hope for. I don't ask for much from college kickers, right? His blocked field goal was, I think, a 52-yarder or a 50-yarder, so it's going to happen. But even 45, making a 45-yarder, that's all I ask for, right? You mentioned Tyler Davis in 2016, who I believe he missed 2 field goals on the year, and his longest one was from 40 yards. But that's really all you want, right? You're hoping that for Penn State and their offense that they're not taking too many field goals from beyond 45 yards or even beyond 40 yards, to be honest. But just going back to the defense real quick, really good game for them, right? I shouldn't say a lot of Illinois' yards, but they certainly got some. Josh Paddock, their backup quarterback, threw for 129 yards, which was largely against, third and I'll just say third stringers for sure. So it kind of skews as far as the team stats go, but it was what you hope for from Manny Diaz defense, where they were creating havoc, did a better job of getting pressure on the quarterback and finishing some sacks and some tackles for loss. And, tackling was still a little shoddy here and there, but overall pretty good. But yeah, I mean, they made life hell for Luke Altmaier, who, just really couldn't get things going. It felt like every time that Illinois kind of had a chance, and, they hung around for a while, 16-7, and they certainly had their chances, but Penn State would come up with an interception, whether it was Abdul Carter early in the game, and then Daquan Hardy, who made his return as well, had a beautiful interception. Johnny Dixon down in the red zone makes an interception. So just, timely plays, what you need from a defense. When people think about elite defenses, of course you want defenses that go 3 and out every single time, but especially in today's college football with the offenses being so good, that's not going to always happen. So you need to be able to create turnovers, give your offense, short fields. And that's what Penn State's defense did today. And that's why we thought this was a top 5 unit going in. So as frustrating as the offense was, and I'm sure we'll get to that here shortly or get into that more, just about everything you can ask for from the defense.
Pretty much. Before we talk about the offense real quick, I just want to mention Mark Rogers himself will have his live call-in show per usual, start at 11:30 Eastern tonight on the Voice of College Football channel. So if you got some hot takes on Penn State's defense, or or how atrocious at time the offense looked, which we're about to dive into, you can get on his live call-in show and, voice your frustrations there. So also, you can join our Discord channel for great discussion. Also get Mark's picks. He was 11-6 against the spread last week. Go to Patreon, search for Mark Rogers TV. Pat, so let's dive into the offense. Better get your gas mask on or whatever device helps you breathe through this next segment. So, I mean, they did put up, like I said, they did cover the spread ultimately. They still have their streak of, what's the streak
30,
at now? 30 points per game.
Games. I'm sorry. It's weird that you just mentioned that because I'm looking it up now. I know I saw on Twitter. Where was it at? This is live. It was 9 games, so now it's 10 games. They Florida State also scored. Yeah, Florida State scored 31, so Florida State's now at 9 as well. But Penn State keeps their streak of 30-point games alive, just barely. But
which was looking pretty dicey for the first 3.5 quarters, we'll say. We talked about Drew Auer a bit earlier. Looked human today, although he was not helped by some drops from receivers. I just remember Malik McLean had a couple drops, which, you hate to see considering he had a nice touchdown grab against West Virginia. But, he had that. The run game couldn't really get going. The run blocking, which, at the point of attack, they were pretty good the first couple of weeks. But today, I mean, O-line seemed to struggle to get any push with the run game. And, as a result, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen couldn't really break anything big. Singleton did finally in fourth quarter put the game away for real with that 16-yard run up the gut against probably what was a very gassed Illinois defense by that point. But I don't know about you. Are you ready to hit the panic button on the run game yet, Pat?
No. Once again, like when you look back at the West Virginia game and the Delaware game too, they struggled generating big offensive plays running the ball, but they weren't necessarily struggling getting yards, right? It felt like if they needed, 4, 5, 6 yards out of pop, they were getting that against West Virginia and Delaware. So today, obviously a little bit more of a struggle. Offensive line blocking wasn't there. I also thought, once again, I say this and I will say this every podcast, coming on here and having a take when you just watched the game and, for myself, tweeting the game and blogging the game. So it's like, you're not as, locked in on the play to play as maybe I would like to be. It's tough coming on here and, fully committing to something without watching it a second time. But I didn't think Nick Singleton, I feel like he had a couple holes here and there and kind of was more patient than maybe he could have been. And, just broken tackles. You'd like to see Katron Allen and Nick Singleton break a couple more tackles just because if we're saying that they're two of the top 5, top 10 running backs in the country, it shouldn't just necessarily be all about, the blocking needs to be better. And that's kind of the case and why people are kind of saying, for Drew today, it's like, he's overrated because, he didn't play well. And it's like, okay, well, offensive line didn't do great. It wasn't helped with the wide receivers and they dropped balls. But the idea for Penn State fans and for Penn State in general with Drew is that, okay, he's an elite quarterback. He will raise, these units up that even if the offensive line doesn't block the way they should, and even if the wide receivers are struggling, that, he's somehow going to, make push it through. But obviously that didn't happen today. As far as the rushing offense goes, still not greatly concerned. This is like very cliche to say, and I don't necessarily fully believe it, but it feels like, West Virginia was a lot of dinking and dunking, other than that first play or first couple plays of the game where they hit Keandre Lambert-Smith deep. It was, 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, nothing really, stretching the field. And same thing with the Delaware game where they kind of just, slowly move the ball down the field. I felt like today they really weren't taking too many chances deep. And I don't want to say they're saving that necessarily because, right, those aren't necessarily high efficient plays, but it just feels like.
Do you think, sorry not to interrupt, Pat, do you think that's more because the offensive line didn't give Drew time to let the plays develop and for someone to get open that he could take a deep shot at? Or do you think it's more like maybe Drew didn't quite see the play developing, or maybe it was too focused on checking down.
It was probably a little bit of both. I don't remember the exacts. I want to say it was in the second quarter. He didn't have good protection, but he had Keandre Lambert-Smith open deep for a touchdown. I believe Liam Clifford would have also been open over the middle for, a solid 15-yard gain. But because he didn't have a clean pocket, he was sort of running around and just probably wouldn't have been able to generate enough power into his throw to really step into it to hit Keandre Lambert-Smith. But that's kind of where it comes back to with Drew, that yes, he didn't have good protection, but even felt like when he had good protection today that he maybe wasn't as comfortable in the pocket, which happens. I don't know if you put the comment up, I know you have it starred, but Jack Straw said ugly offensive effort, but important for growth of young QB. There we go.
Well said, Jack.
I was going to say that's incredibly well said, because these types of games, as frustrating as they are, this was what was needed. Drew, the offense, and yes, this is a spin zone 100%. If Ohio State had looked like this, I would of course be clowning them, but this happened to Penn State, so I'm going to spin zone it. But no, right through a 12-game season, and especially first road game on the road, Brett Bielema, really knows how to make games ugly. This was, I don't know what your score prediction was. Mine was 30 to 17, so I was pretty close, but
I said 45-17. That included a defensive touchdown, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like, even without that, I was hoping they would blast them a little more, at least put up a little bit more points wise. But like I said, we still have that 10-game streak of 30+ games going. So hopefully they keep it up next week against Iowa.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on Drew? I'm fully in the camp of this game. Like, a game like this was more than likely going to happen. The West Virginia game was so good, and the Delaware game was so good that he wasn't going to be perfect. But as
I learned today, he's a human being, and they're not perfect. They're going to have, even a guy like Drew Hour is going to have a rough game, and I'm sure you think of other elite before. I'm sure Trevor Lawrence didn't have had some rough games when he was at Clemson, for example. Even the best of the best have tough games from times. It's not like Drew Hour was terrible today. He had some nice throws. He wasn't helped by a few drops either, which either would have moved the chains or, one of them. I mean, that would have been touchdown to Katron Allen. That was an excellent throw. I mean, it's a tough ball to catch, admittedly, but I mean, only Drew could put a ball like that in the money. Like, any other quarterback almost wouldn't have put it anywhere near Katron's hands. So, I mean, you see glimpses of it. I mean, but of course, like I said, I think there's just certain things he needs to tweak and needs to just get better at noticing. And that'll come with more time, more reps. So, I'm hopeful he can look better next week against Iowa. They some good work this week in the film room. I know, of course, obviously Iowa, they bring a very tough defense themselves, probably tougher than Illinois. But it is the whiteout in Happy Valley. So we can talk about that maybe a little bit later. But no, I'm not concerned about Drew going forward. Everyone has rough games. I have my concerns with the run game, just because, again, we have yet to see Katron or Nick just bust something like over 20 yards. I miss seeing Singleton take I'll just see something similar to his Rose Bowl run, at least once this season. So hopefully it's coming, but that comes down to the O-line though. They definitely got to block a hell of a lot better than they did today overall. And second level blocking's got to get better too. Like I said, I think maybe Nick, maybe they were trying to force some things too. Nick and Kate, they could have just busted in or out. But I will say one thing I did like, I liked how Yurcich adjusted at one point and started throwing onto the perimeter, like swing passes basically to Singleton. And that helped. I think that the first touchdown in the second half, what there was a play where they just threw it out to Singleton by the sideline, and he just took that, for a nice 20-yard gain or something. But definitely moved the chains, and ultimately led to Penn State reaching the end zone and giving themselves a little bit of cushion at that point before Nick put it to rest in the early fourth quarter. And I guess tight ends. Let's talk about the tight ends a little bit. Tyler Warren catching a touchdown pass from, actually, it was Trey Potts. I don't know if CBS still keeps saying it's Katron Allen. They haven't corrected that, but that was definitely Trey Potts, jersey number 23, who was throwing that. So that's off to Mr. Potts and Tyler for making such a great catch. But, tight ends, what do you think about them, Pat?
I mean, good. I wish Theo Johnson would continue to be more involved, and maybe he just isn't that good of a receiver, and I'm just, trying to believe something that doesn't exist. But I just continue to see this world where this guy is 6'6", 260, runs, like a 4.5, has like a 30-inch vertical. He's going to go to the NFL Combine, and people are going to be like, oh my God, this guy's so amazing. He's going to go as like a second-round pick and then end up being like a 3-time Pro Bowler in the NFL. And then we'll look back on his like Penn State stats, and it'll be like George Kittle at Iowa, where it's like, oh, they didn't really use him. So I'm just frustrated with that. But Tyler Warren's also really good. I guess just like receivers in general, and tight ends kind of like jump into that too. Like just looking today, like this was the type of game, right? A sloppy game like this in the past. If this is 2021, do you know who goes out there today and has 9 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns? Jahan Dotson. And not to say that, I expect Penn State to have a Jahan Dotson at, every single season, because that's unrealistic. But, Nick Singleton, 3 receptions. Tyler Warren, 3 receptions. Theo Johnson, 2. Keandre Lambert-Smith, only 3 receptions for 23 yards. Caden Sanders, 2 receptions. Penn State was without Trey Wallace, Harrison Wallace, for the record. He was questionable going into the game. Their number 2 wide receiver. So hopefully he'll be back next week. They just didn't want to, chance it. But this kind of, right, when going into the season, like what was a concern was the fact that who's that number 1 wide receiver who's someone against Ohio State or Michigan, or in ugly games like this, that Drew can kind of just depend on play after play to find and have, 8 receptions, 9 receptions, 10 receptions.
How about that lack of a deep threat too? Like we're still kind of searching for that consistent deep threat. That was the issue last year with the offense, and it's carried over into this year so far. Maybe someone will emerge, but hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, no. I mean, Keandre Lambert-Smith in a sense, but he's been playing a little bit more in the slot this year, which generally isn't a spot that you're going to see as many deep chances. And, Trey Wallace as well, who again was out today. But yeah, it just felt like the passing game was a little bit flat. And whether that was, like I said before, them, I don't necessarily want to say hold things back, but, trying to kind of do what they did against West Virginia and Delaware, coming in with that game plan of, efficient passes, dinking and dunking. Let's try to get 12 yards, at a time, as opposed to like massive big plays. I don't know, but just felt a little bit off. And again, in the grand scheme of things, this is not that big of a deal. Penn State winning, 30-13 on the road against Illinois, where they didn't, play that well in general. Right. Once again, not to hammer home the point that I called this, but again, it was completely expected. So I'm not going to sit here and act like it's the worst thing, but a couple of the things going into the season that we were worried about kind of did, jump out today. So good that they got out of the way against Illinois. As nice as like a 49-7 win would have been, these types of games are going to happen. So hopefully they can learn from it. What did you think of the T formation in the first quarter? 2-yard line, T formation, 3 plays.
What I think teams are now prepared for it. Any defensive pulse is probably gonna snuff it out. And
you saw Illinois take a timeout when Penn State got 1st and goal at the 2 in the first quarter, and they lined up the T formation. Illinois took a timeout, came out, and defended pretty well.
I'm sure that's the play. I have to imagine Brett Bielema and staff was practicing nonstop, like on that all week long. So it showed. I mean, but then I liked how later on they line up in a T, but then at the last second, they would, Drew and then would pull back out into like they've spread out a little into a different formation to try to throw them off. So, I look for that little wrinkle. I'd look for them to throw some more wrinkles out of the T formation, put that on tape for Iowa and any future opponents to prepare for. So they're not just, so then you leave them guessing like, oh, are they going to try to run it, or are they going to like break out into a different formation and throw from there, or hand it off from it? Like, whereas before it's just, T formation, it's coming. They're just going to try to power run up the gut. And, it worked well last year. I think this year teams are going to be well prepared for it now. So it's just, I think West Virginia and Delaware probably just didn't have the horses on defense to actually stop it, even though they knew what was coming. But, a team like Iowa, they'll definitely be ready to snuff that out. So I would look for some more like, what's the word? Just more like different
versatility.
Yeah. Versatility out of the T formation. So
I would like, we have this 6'5". Okay, I was gonna say 250. It's probably like 240. I won't like inflate a weight because I'm trying to make a point. But we have a 6'5", 240 pounds, beautiful baby boy, Drew Allure. Let's get the tush push in there. I don't know in college if you're allowed to do like line up exactly how like the Eagles do, where they literally have like 3 guys right behind Jalen Hurts and then just push them right away. But
you're allowed to push a play. I mean that rule.
And they line up like literally like a yard behind Allure. I don't know if they can or not.
I think you're allowed to push a ball carrier forward now. They got rid of the rule that said you couldn't push. So I mean it was because at the time that was illegal. I mean, nowadays you're allowed to do that. Regardless, so they could if they wanted. Maybe they just don't.
I don't know. Just first, again, like the T formation had been, it worked against West Virginia, worked against Delaware. It was funny last year. Former BSC writer Clay Sortig was complaining about it at the end of the season, specifically in the Maryland game when they scored like 3 touchdowns on it. Like
I worked best against Maryland.
Yeah, so it really has been working a lot more. I don't want to say recently because it worked for majority of last year, but certainly was working at the end of last year in the Rose Bowl. It worked really well. This year, it's been working really well. And just because it doesn't work, against Illinois on it was 2 running plays. The toss, I didn't really love the toss, but not to say they completely abandoned it. But I don't know. Like, you have beautiful Drew Allure, big old Drew Allure. Like, let's just push him from 2 yards out. He'll get in. Like, I don't know. I would like to see that. I do agree with you though that especially after Brett Bielema had taken that timeout, come out same formation, right? You have Khalil Dinkins, who's a super athletic tight end. You have Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren, who are really good tight ends. You have Nick Singleton, who looks really, really, looked really improved as a pass catcher today. I know Katron Allen can catch the ball as well. Like, just even spread them out like 5 wide, like and have Drew pound, like again, just pound it in. Like, it feels like obviously you don't want to put too much onto your T formation and things like that, but I don't know. I agree with you on like the versatility thing, just to make teams kind of think about it. But yeah, I was just curious because that was like not the first sign that this game is gonna kind of go how it ended up going, but when we have 1st and goal from the 2 and we do our T formation and Penn State doesn't score, it's like, okay, this is going to be that ugly game that nobody's going to be happy with. And we're going to come back after the game and say the offensive line stinks and Drew Allure is overrated and the wide receiver stinks and Manny Diaz gave up too many yards despite the fact that, they generated 5 turnovers. But I was just curious.
By the way, I have to ask you, was there any point in the game, especially when it was still stuck at 16-7, where you're thinking, oh boy, this feels like 2021 all over again, where you just need one more touchdown to really put this game out of reach for Illinois. So they couldn't just run the ball; they would have to start throwing, and that set, and like Penn State's defense could then just pin their ears back and really get to Luke Altmaier. But when it kept saying stuck at 16-7, I mean, part of me was getting that sinking feeling. Like, I was thinking to myself, okay, the next team that scores is going to win this game.
Yeah. And I think I will say that I probably had that same thought. For the most part, like, again, it's always easier after the game to be like, I wasn't worried at all. But for the most part, no. When Penn State did come out and they punted on three of their first three drives after halftime, and I think at least two of them were 3-and-outs. Yeah, you're not feeling great, but it was more of a game that you're annoyed at than concerned with. Not that there's not concerning things, not that, again, we talked about a lot of them, but it was more annoying. I was more annoyed at Penn State than I was concerned throughout the day. Because even I was thinking, Illinois go down and score, it's gonna be 16-14. We're gonna have to like do this whole stupid thing where I have to really watch the fourth quarter and but no, I can't say I was greatly concerned. I guess you were slightly more concerned, but I also was not concerned in 2021. So what do I was concerned much too. I think it was like the 6th overtime. I was like, okay, Penn State might actually lose this game if we don't turn it on here. But what were you thinking during the game?
Well, I was thinking, first of all, and yes, I agree, LFG, this is the best kind of win to coach and teach from offensively, at least. Yeah, I mean, I remember when we weren't able to, especially, I was concerned when we couldn't punch it in from the 2. We had 4 chances to do that. Couldn't punch it in, settled for a field goal. That was my first concern. Yeah, just, kicking 3 field goals, only getting 1 touchdown, out of those turnovers early on. That concerning to me, because I'm thinking, just have another touchdown. You're up by no less than 10 points going into halftime, which I would feel more comfortable with. And then, of course, in the second half, when they still, it's still stuck at 16-7, offense still looking sluggish. I had concerns then too, but again, defense just balled out. I hope, the offense takes them out for a nice steak dinner this week. But once they finally got it and scored again when Potts threw that pass to Warren, I started to relax more because I knew Illinois just did the way the defense was playing. Illinois was not going to make up a 16-point deficit. So
no, definitely not. When Penn State went up 30-7, there was a 10 or 11 minutes left. They take Drew out. They put Bo in. Were you surprised by that at all? Because I was a little. I thought that Drew. I didn't even think that they were going to go to the backup.
I was literally about to ask you that, Pat.
Yeah.
So you took the words out of my mouth, but I was a little surprised. I thought they would give Drew one more series, like in early fourth quarter, before putting Bo in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I understood it. It's 30-7. The game's over. I mean, Illinois is putting in their backup quarterback. Well, maybe that was because at that point, Altmaier had thrown 4 picks and maybe just wanted to change it. But, it's not like John Paddock was
he was not good
world beater who was going to lead the most amazing comeback in Illinois history. So it was sort of like waving the white flag. So I understood getting Bo in there, getting some reps. I mean, I wish they would let him throw a bit more, but at the same time, I understand, you don't want him throwing some interception that gives Illinois a short field, and then they score a touchdown. Suddenly it's an interesting game again. So I get that. Don't want to get Drew hurt either, but at the same time, I can understand people like the argument, well, he's still a guy you want to get some more reps for.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I understand not wanting to risk an injury when you've got the game in hand. So
it just felt a little early. And I say this, I feel like last year is like Penn State would go up by like 10 points. Be like, okay, let's get Sean out of there. Don't want to get him hurt. Let's get Drew some reps. That this year we have Drew. And yes, it was the 37 game. Penn State wasn't going to lose the game at that point. But there's a part of me that is slightly concerned that they almost went with Bo because it was, okay, we're going to run the ball anyway. We're going to run the clock. So let's put Bo in because obviously he's a better runner. We don't want to get Drew hurt, but he's also can run that offense a little bit more, which I just don't think if Penn State was running the ball at, averaging 5.5 yards per carry going into that fourth quarter and they're up 30-7. I don't know if they're taking Drew out and putting Bo in. I wonder if they would just run the ball knowing that they can pick up first downs. that's the only concerning part for me, that I feel like there was a little bit of, by and large, was mostly about just getting Drew out of there just because the game was basically over. But I feel like there was a little bit of strategy behind it, which I don't particularly love, that, Mike Yurchich or James Franklin, whoever ended up making that call, thought that if we're going to run the ball anyway, to put Bo in. But again, if that is one of the major taking points, that we took our starter out too early in his first road start because Penn State was up 30-7, then again, that's not a bad place to be at. But just wanted to bring that up, just because I thought it was a little interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could make a case for either, playing Bo at that point or sticking with Drew for maybe one more series before you stick Bo. I mean, they were definitely at that point sticking the second string defense in there for the fourth quarter. I like how they've been getting those backups a lot of reps. I mean, that's going to come in handy down the road for the defense, especially. So yeah, but it's, in the end of the day, they won. I mean, I won't say it was comfortable for the first like 2.5, 3 quarters, but in the end they won comfortably. I mean, it wasn't much drama in the fourth quarter. Really no drama in the fourth quarter because, Nick Singleton put that to bed at the beginning of the quarter. But, it was a win that, it was kind of like it was sloppy at times, but they took care of business. They cover the spread, which much to your chagrin, Pat, but they cover the spread, and
that's okay. I don't bet on Penn State ever, really ever, because I know, despite the fact that I started this entire thing with telling myself how much I know about Penn State, and I said that my prediction was that Illinois would cover, and they did not. But no, I never bet on Penn State anyway.
But yeah, in the end, look, it's an unsatisfying win, but I will take an unsatisfying win like this any day of the week over a beautiful loss. When I say beautiful loss, I mean like the 2017 Rose Bowl type of loss. So, win's a win.
It was to be expected in some cases, right? Even for people that thought that this was going to be, a blowout. I think this game, more so than West Virginia game, and obviously the Delaware game, just was, a weird spot on the schedule. First road game. Even though, Iowa's not ranked, and I don't know if that's necessarily a game. I mean,
Iowa is ranked. They're 25th.
Oh, they are? Sorry, okay.
Currently, they're losing 7-0 to Western Michigan first quarter, but the game is in a delay right now, weather delay, it seems so.
But either way, whiteout game next week, 7:30. That's a game that players are obviously looking forward to. I don't want to say this was like a letdown game, because I think it was,
no, not a letdown
game, but or rather a look ahead game. Sorry, letdown would be game after. I don't want to say it was a look ahead game, because I think Penn State did for the most
I don't think they were going to be looking ahead after what happened 2 years ago. It's just, obviously, I had expected Illinois would come out more fired up and looking to put on a better performance after, the first 2 games looking not so good. I mean, they were very fortunate to not be coming into this game winless. They needed to convert a miracle 4th down conversion to set up the game-winning field goal against Toledo in their season opener. And then, of course, Kansas just ran and threw all over them. So, maybe we got lulled into a sense of complacency, or just as fans, not the players, but we got lulled into thinking, oh, okay, well, I guess their defense is just bad, even though they have Drazon Newton, but still, they're just bad. I even said in my roundtable prediction, I said 45-17 Penn State. I was pretty bullish. So I said something about Drew coloring them up like a Thanksgiving turkey, which didn't quite happen. But so kind of brought things down to earth a little bit going forward. But it's I still feel I guess we can talk about Iowa for a little bit. I still feel pretty good about Penn State covering. I think the last time I saw the spread, it was -13 for Penn State. Because I'm thinking something like a 14 to 17 point win over the Hawkeyes.
I was, again, I'm not like, it's probably about the same concern, but I think it says a lot about Iowa that I was almost more nervous, and I wasn't nervous for Illinois, but almost more I thought this was going to be this type of game where it's like, they're going to win, but it's not going to look that great. I have higher expectations for Iowa just because, again, the whiteout against an inferior opponent, Penn State generally does pretty well. Penn State, people like to make fun of like the record and the whiteout because, for the longest time, Penn State was like a 12-point underdog in whiteout games because they were playing the likes of, Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama and teams that are ranked, especially when Penn State was unranked. But, you saw last year Penn State coming off, getting blown out at Michigan. They have, a Minnesota team that, albeit was starting a backup quarterback, but Minnesota team that was, not too bad last year, bold team coming into, a primetime whiteout game. And
I was worried about Mo Ibrahim running all over Penn State after seeing what Michigan did the week before. So,
yeah. So it's just hard to see Iowa coming in and winning, but we'll see. Iowa's another team. Speaking of teams that know how to make it, muck it up and make it dirty, Iowa can certainly do that. But this is 100% spin zone. I'm not saying I understand what I'm saying, but I'm kind of glad that Penn State got this out of the way because I do think, from a self-scouting perspective and what James Franklin, does, I think that they can learn from this. So not the end of the world that they win 30-13 on the road. And still not greatly concerned about Iowa. And as you said, they're down 7-0 against Western Michigan. So we'll see what happens. By the way, South Carolina up on Georgia with 3:27 left in the second, 7-3. So college football is wild beast. Just
it is
that you win and be very happy that you covered like Penn State did today.
I mean, I guess. Well, but John Rothstein, the college basketball writer, CBS Sports. Just to kind of paraphrase college football, where the unexpected becomes the ordinary.
Yeah. No, that's certainly because I don't know if we're gonna get like a 2007 was the wild year that like everybody kept losing, or it was 2007. I don't think we're gonna get a 2007 type year, but it does feel like there's not one or two really, really great teams that teams 1 through 9 are all kind of equal. So,
by the way, Jim, I've seen your thing. I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, let's all remember, even though they got Cade McNamara quarterback and Eric All tight end, and I think they got an Ohio State receiver who transferred in. This is still a Brian Ferentz coached offense. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
What's the saying? You put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. So Cade McNamara might be. I don't know if Cade McNamara is the highest brand of lipstick, but you can get Cade McNamara and Eric All and some transfers. But like you said, Brian Ferentz is Brian Ferentz. So not greatly concerned. Hopefully you're not replaying this clip next weekend of me going not greatly concerned and then come back to, Penn State, getting upset. But not concerned. All in all, good first 3 games. If you would have told me going into the season, Penn State, they win pretty comfortably against West Virginia. They do what they should do. They do what they should do against Delaware. They basically do what they should do or what was expected against Illinois. Some good things, some bad things, some things to learn from. I can't complain. I mean, the defense, they play like this every game. They'll have a chance in every game to get the dub, even against Michigan and Ohio State. But of course, like I said, offense needs to get a lot better if they're going to, break through and get a split against one of those teams. And, either win the Big Ten East, or get into the playoffs as 11-1 at large. We'll see. But Pat, any parting thoughts? Any trivia questions you want to throw at me? I know you love trivia. I haven't asked you anything. No, I actually don't have anything too great to. This was a pretty, I don't want to say like a quiet game, but there wasn't really anything like majorly notable about it. One of my predictions, by the way, is that Penn State would not make a field goal over 40 yards, which that happened today. So I'm 0 for 1 on my 5 things I know. Penn State had a player with 2 sacks today, Tim. Do you know who that player was?
Well, it's not Chop Robinson.
Speaking of, sorry, not to cut you off. Chop Robinson had a tackle for loss in the first quarter. Devon Ellis gets called for unsportsmanlike conduct. That's cannot happen when you're, a leader like Devon Ellis. And similarly, Penn State has, I believe it was 3rd and 2 down red zone. Keandre Lambert-Smith shoves Illinois defensive back, gets called for unsportsmanlike conduct. People are mad that, the refs, soft calls, whatever. I don't really care. When you're Keandre Lambert-Smith, you're Devon Ellis, and you're leaders of the team, that flat out cannot happen. And they're, once again, very lucky this happened against Illinois, because if that happens against Ohio State, 2 plays like that, I don't know if you're winning those games. So
I believe that's where the blocked field goal happened, and then Illinois subsequent. I mean, if Keandre Lambert-Smith keeps his emotions in check, and who knows, maybe Penn State makes 16-0 at the very least, or maybe even it's 20-0, and maybe that's a score going into halftime. And I don't know about you, I'm feeling a hell of a lot better at halftime than I was when it was 16-7.
And it was off that block kick that Illinois goes down and scores a touchdown. So even if Penn State,
the first team defense might have pulled a shutout. I think Illinois would have scored in garbage time still, but kind of like West Virginia. I mean, there's, the first team defense came close to pitching a shutout.
Yeah.
So
anyway, 2 sacks. Who had it?
Without pulling up my box score tab here, I'm gonna guess it was
player who had not played yet this year.
Oh, Daquan Hardy.
No. Other player.
Keziah Izzard.
Yep, there you go. Keziah Izzard. Good to see him back. I believe both his sacks did come in the 4th quarter. So I think Penn State we'll see what snap counts are on Tuesday when we have that on blackshoediaries.com. But good to see him back. He is going to be an important cog for the defense and the defensive line in the future. Big body, 6'3", 295. So it was good to see him back. And even if those sacks came, in the 4th quarter, was a pleasant sight to see that Izzard was back. And I mean, Vanover's back. Daquan Hardy returns, has an interception. So good for Penn State to get those guys back.
Really important for depth going down the road too. So it was good to see it. Whatever they're being held out was probably just due to some disciplinary stuff, probably violation of team. I mean, I'm not here to speculate, but something that
Izzard. I believe Izzard was bumps and bruises. At least that's what James Franklin said. So
okay. But I think Hardy seemed like it was disciplinary. I think
Hardy and Vanover, they did not mention injuries. So one can assume that it was them knuckleheads in the summer. Which that happens. We can all be knuckleheads.
Yeah, these are college kids, so you remember being a college kid. You had time for knuckleheads. So, thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch us, whether it was on the Voice of College Football channel on YouTube. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And also, if you watch us at blackshoediaries.com, welcome. Black Shoe Diaries, that's where your one-stop shop for Penn State football and Penn State sports coverage year-round. I know it's only September, but before you know it, we'll be in wrestling season, basketball season, hockey season. So we got some nice, talented writers who cover all those sports and then some. So, definitely want to keep checking us out throughout the year. Just shout out to all you who tuned, Emily Robinson, Mr. Jones, Anthony Whalen, LFG, Jackson Johnson, Paul Wall. Who else do we got here? Studio Live, Jason Rawlison, Jim R, Troy V. And I believe I've given you all shout outs. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we'll be back Saturday night next week for a little after dark show for when Penn State finishes against Iowa. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.